So, starting with the tech news articles of the week, we thought for this version of the podcast, we'll do a deeper dive into AI, since there were some really high profile AI announcements in the last 2 weeks. And for this podcast, I think I wanted to start on the big announcements that came out from two large AI organizations. The first one is from OpenAI, and it's called DALI 2. So it's called DALI because it's named after Salvador Dali, the famous surrealist painter. And the idea is DALI 2 is a AI system that can generate realistic images and art just based on a text description of what you want. So think of it as like the ultimate painter or stock image generator. And you can literally ask it like some of the most wildest, like you can give it the wildest prompts and it will generate it for you. So
that is crazy.
The big example that they talk about is like if you literally type to DALI 2 that I want an astronaut riding on a horse in a photorealistic style, it'll generate this image and it'll generate other variants of that image. And this is an extension.
That is impressive.
Yeah, this is an extension of DALI 1.
Is that like an illustration?
Yeah, so it can do illustrations, it can do photorealistic images, and this is just completely generated by this was not a pre-existing image.
Wow.
Yeah.
No component of that was pre-existing, or so like picking up pieces
that's kind of the philosophical thing about AI, right? Like, so how much of it is its creative prowess versus how much of it is memory.
Yeah.
So so in this podcast, especially for sort of listeners that may not be attuned to machine learning, since I come from sort of like the academic space, I can sort of explain how some of these systems work in terms of how you train them. And these are basically large models, mathematical models, which store something called parameters. So back in the day, machine learning systems about 20 years ago, they would be used for classification. So if you gave it an image of like handwritten numbers, for example, can you have a handwriting recognition software using AI? And that was one of the first big AI challenges that came out more than 20 years ago, and it was called the MNIST handwritten database. And I'm trying to, for the benefit of people who are watching this podcast on YouTube, I'm trying to pick up some of the sort of articles about like how this progressed. So the MNIST database was literally, this was the training set of just some handwritten examples of the digits from 0 through 9. And this would be fed into, some kind of model. You make some kind of program that looks at these and then tries to learn from these. So these would be labeled. These are a set of zeros, these are a set of ones, etc. And then you can give it a new handwritten sort of, digit, and then does it accurately recognize that, what you wrote was a 0 or a 1. This is an effectively solved problem. People know this by now, right? Like handwritten digits, or when you draw something on your phone screen, a lot of software can pretty reasonably make out what you're writing these days. But this is how it started. ML started, these were visual recognition tasks or visual classification tasks in machine learning. And this stuff started to get more and more ambitious. So starting from just recognizing 10 categories of digits, we went into something called ImageNet, which is I have hundreds of thousands of categories of photos that I pre-labeled and pre-categorized. Can you train a machine learning model to accurately detect whether is the thing in the photo a subject in a photo? Is it a person? Is it a dog? Is it a a car, for example? And that drives a lot of sort of these self-driving systems that are not based on LiDAR. They use object detection algorithms to kind of figure out, what is that a stop sign? Is that is that another car? Is that a pedestrian? So this is
what this reminds me of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are those CAPTCHAs and ask you to figure out what a traffic light and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, I mean, captures are a way that some of these big companies, especially Google, they use captures to uh, basically make their models more robust. So they're asking you to do the labeling so that they can feed it back
Yeah.
into a machine learning model. So artificial intelligence as a concept has existed for more than 40, 50 years. It was first proposed in the 60s, and in the 70s, 80s, academically, what most people thought that AI was going to be was you could basically codify a set of rules, and then you could have systems obey a set of rules. And as long as you had a really large set of rules that you somehow codified, that's enough to create an artificial intelligence for a certain task. And quickly it was people realized that that's not the way to go around it. What you need to do is you need to train it by giving it examples and then let it learn on its own what are the
Yeah.
discriminating features for different things. So yeah, 10 years ago it was ImageNet, and that's when deep neural networks became the
Yeah.
sort
And
of the
that's basically
yeah.
your machine learning algorithm figuring out what connects with another thing, right?
Yeah,
So just for
yeah. So if I'm pulling up another image for those who are on the video podcast, but the idea of a deep image net is basically you have these you're training a model based on some kind of network of data, and then you're kind of learning for each part of your data how important is that data and how relevant it is for different for different levels. These are basically neural networks, but then what happened was people added crazy amounts of layers in between, and that's how they became deep neural nets. So, I mean, you could have an entire university semester's course, actually, multiple university semesters of courses, trying to explain how these things work. But what happened in the last 10 years or the last 5 years is that these networks became more and more complex. They became larger. So early networks would have maybe 100 nodes, 1,000 nodes. Now we're looking at networks that have billions and billions of nodes. They need to be stored on massive data centers and things like that. And they're trained by hundreds of GPUs. So that's essentially what things like DALI were trained on. They also use more complex machine learning models to generate things. So DALI was just an example of a visual generation system. OpenAI had another system called GPT-3, which is you could give it some text and it could just extend the text. Like you could give it part of a story and it will continue writing the story. You could give it song lyrics and it'll continue writing the song in the style of the song. So GPT-3 was also another big sort of thing that they had. So DALI, the beautiful thing about DALI is you can give it a text based prompt and it'll generate an image, or you can give it an existing image and then you can say add an object to the scene, and it'll automatically kind of figure out from the context like how am I supposed to do this. So in this scene in the video podcast, there's an image of like an indoor pool with an outdoor section through big glass windows, and there are three areas of the image that are marked that you can add a flamingo to. So if you add a flamingo to image location number 1, which is not in the pool, it just sits there in a proper way with the shadows and lighting perfectly. But if you switch it over to location 2, it sits in the pool. There are pool reflections of the inflatable flamingo, and if you put it outside, then it turns into a flamingo garden piece. Yeah.
another interesting point over here is because basically what we're saying now is what we're looking at is generative art, right? So
Yes, generative
how
art.
does this cross paths with NFTs
Oh,
and that whole thing right now?
you
I mean,
you yeah. I mean, I can go on a
so
very long rant about NFTs. It's nice that you kind of brought it up. So it is true that OpenAI's goals may or may not align with this idea of I mean, so they have the system. They are providing access to it on a waitlisted uh, system. You can join a waitlist to have access to the API that generates these images for you. They are slowly releasing it. It's not a full public release because there's a lot of potential for harm here. Like people can generate sort of like violent imagery or disturbing imagery and things like that. You could also
Yeah.
uh, you could also generate like fake sort of photos and use it to push certain narratives. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the main reason that they talk about why this access to this stuff is limited. But also, you can think of this as commercialization, right? You could open a stock photo service. Literally, you type in,
Yeah.
you type in a like, I want an image of this, and you will get it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but you can see that like some other company that develops or trains a machine learning model like this could kind of just automatically generate NFTs. So the idea with NFTs is that art is valuable in the sense that it's typically the uniqueness of the art and its
Yeah.
aesthetic value. Those There are a lot of reasons you would price artwork in certain ways. One of it is scarcity, or the idea. The problem with digital art is that it's infinitely reproducible, and the idea of
Yeah.
NFTs was you
That's the
can
thing.
you can try to create a non-fungible chain of ownership for an art piece. The
Again,
way
I mean,
yeah, the way it works is because it works on the blockchain, and because the blockchain is such a wasteful system of keeping track of data. That's what really sort of quote unquote grinds my gears. There was an amazing video by a Google researcher. It's like a joke video of, here are the
okay.
worst hard drives I can think of. He creates a hard drive out of used COVID-19 tests, because they've got a this is a at-home COVID-19 test that has circuitry in it.
Okay.
So he pulls out the
Right.
circuitry, the flash ROM inside, and then he solders a lot of them together to create a hard drive.
Right.
And he makes another
Talk
hard
about
drive.
unnecessary
Yeah. And then
inventions.
he makes another hard drive out of Tetris games. So the way that the blocks are arranged in thousands of Tetris games can be used to encode bits of information. Anyway, and he shows that all of these, no matter how stupid, they are still less wasteful in terms of dollars per byte or cents per byte than the blockchain. So the amount of energy expended to store a very small amount of data in the blockchain is crazy, right? And one piece of news that actually made me kind of happy about blockchain and NFTs. Like I'm not opposed to the idea that you want to have a secure storage of information of lineage or transactions and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just that blockchain is super wasteful to do that. But what made me really happy was one of the most famous NFTs of all time. Especially when the idea of the NFT came out, was the idea that
The people.
the first tweet NFT.
Oh. Okay.
So Jack Dorsey had the first ever tweet on Twitter. Anybody can actually go and
Right.
see it because it has a tweet ID. You can go, but there was a NFT of that tweet that officially was created
Right.
by Jack Dorsey, and there was I want to say an Iranian crypto investor who bought that for $2.3 million and wanted to try to sell it. It was one of the most publicized NFTs because it was a very famous
Right.
NFT, right? It's the first tweet, NFT of the first tweet.
Yeah. Not the most expensive transaction for NFTs.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
famously
exactly.
famous nevertheless.
But it's expensive,
that's the
right?
thing, right?
No, but no, that's not the best part. The best part was he put it on OpenSea on with some ridiculous reserve price of, like, he wanted to get at least 43 million or something for it, and his top bid for that NFT was $200. So
Wow. Oh
so
wait, this happened last week, right?
yeah. This happened last week.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. I saw that. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious. That's the situation. So yeah, coming back to the point, I don't see the incentive for a company to NFTify auto-generated art, unless and the only incentive for it is to make a lot of money really quickly and kind of exit. But then you could argue
Yeah, but I
that
think
that's the situation with NFTs right now.
yeah, exactly, right. So that's what I was about to say is a lot of NFTs is just that right now. If you can make a buck, and then exit quickly,
Yeah,
because there is no nuance to it, right? It's just
it's purely
people
speculative.
people buying apes for no apparent reason, and everything else is an ape.
See,
Um,
here's we are the Tech Cynics podcast, and we need to start trying to live up to our name, right? So here's my idea on like how to take a new piece of technology and evaluate it critically. You ask, if you see a new piece of technology, ask what is the problem that that technology is trying to solve. All right,
oh yeah, yeah.
and if that problem basically seems like, oh no, this is not a real problem, this is an invented problem, then that's where you kind of smell the BS behind the
It's more of
technology.
that solution trying to find a problem situation, right? So it's the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are other issues, like maybe you have a genuine problem, but then you come up with a suboptimal solution that doesn't consider all the different. That's a different thing altogether. But the blockchain, crypto, NFT space, and to some extent Web3, anytime you talk to a proponent or somebody who's an entrepreneur, just ask them, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And
Yeah,
I'm willing to bet that most people will not be able to give you a straight answer, or they would give you a very
yeah,
contrived, weird scenario that doesn't really make sense, right? And then when you think about it now, like just compare it to other technologies that really caught on, right? Like we were just talking about WhatsApp before when we were prepping for
yeah.
this podcast. What was the problem that WhatsApp was trying to solve? It was trying to solve this problem of free cross-platform messaging
Exactly. So
uh,
your iMessage versus BBMs versus
versus
everything
SMS,
else, right?
right? That was the big thing. That was the big
Yeah, that
hook in
was a
India.
huge thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you see how successful that became because it solved a real problem. It offered a quick and easy and convenient way for people to do something, and then that's enough for a technology to catch on. I am,
and everybody
yeah.
was happy in the end of the day, right? So the ISP was happy because they were getting more data plans
Oh yeah,
issued because of
yeah.
this. So
I mean,
it's
ISP, I mean,
benefiting everybody.
the ISPs, mobile companies initially were not too happy about this because they were going to lose on SMS revenue.
Well,
But then
that's the
now,
thing, right? But
yeah, but
they
SMS
figured
is,
out the way to,
yeah, exactly.
yeah,
SMS shifted over to this other bulk revenue system for companies
yeah.
that need to send out
SMS is just spam now.
not just spam,
Exactly.
but spam and OTP, right?
OTPs, right?
Spam and
OTPs,
OTP. Yeah,
spams,
yeah,
verification,
exactly.
all that. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You need to look at technology in a critical lens. Think about what exactly is the problem you're trying to solve. If the scenario that they give is very contrived and weird, then I'm telling you, like it's mostly people trying to enter a space where there's a lot of hype, a lot of excitement,
Exactly.
and
That's
then
what I was gonna say
figure
is
out an exit plan where they make money. That's it.
exactly. That's the main objective, right? The
Yeah.
main objective is just to like throw a lot of hype around,
Yeah.
make a lot of money really quick,
Yep.
and then move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah.
That's usually the objective.
100%, right? I mean, there's not necessarily something wrong with that, but when your technology involves you being extremely wasteful in terms of your energy usage and things like that's when you have to think about like what is this thing actually doing good to society or is it actually more harmful, right? The blockchain and blockchain related um, sort of energy expenditure is now reached like a single digit percentage of all energy usage on the planet, right?
Wow.
It's like something like 2% or 1% of all of the energy used on the planet, and by design it's designed to be exponential, so it'll just keep getting worse, right?
Wow.
Yeah, by design it's pretty bad. Like I know there are things like proof
I
of
think at
stake
this
and
point,
coming up, but yeah.
if people are in the space to invest in crypto or anything around blockchain or
Yeah.
NFTs, if you're in the space, you're going to continue to be in the space until you make a living out of it, or you convince enough people around you that that's the bubble you want to live in. But
Yeah.
once you step outside of it, you don't
Yeah.
really hear too much about it.
I mean, the other,
Besides the people actually hyping it.
see, the other problem is that, crypto and NFTs on their own were kind of, yes, they were mooning in the sense that, Bitcoin was starting to get more valuable, but then um, government started cracking down because of its high energy usage. So a lot of people ask me, what are your opinions about Web3? What is Web3 and things like that? And all I want to say is Web3 is just a rebrand that is trying to soften some of the issues around crypto and NFT to make it more palatable to like policymakers and governments. Because if you ask
Yeah,
the average politician, are you for or against Web3? They'll be like, no, man, no, the internet was like a big thing. And we need to make sure that we are on top of the next big evolution. So, yeah, oh, yeah, sure, we'll support Web3.
but
And
but
yeah,
that's the thing. What was Web 2? We didn't hear anything about Web 2.
well,
I
so
mean, it might have been a little bit of a thing, but right now Web 3 is way overshadowing whatever
yeah,
else is happening,
yeah,
right? There seems to be a very finite niche of things that have been defined as Web 3 is
yeah.
all metaverse and
Oh, yeah. Oh,
NFTs, blockchain, all of this is
oh my
just
God.
that is Web 3. Like what
So,
else is going to happen?
yeah, so just for the benefit of like the listeners of the podcast, like as a very quick history refresher, Web 1 and Web 2 kind of made sense because they solved problems that existed. So the problem of Web 1 was, how do you get information
Mainly
to, yeah,
communications. Yeah.
how do you have instant communication between diverse sets of people all around the globe, um, where they can basically have access to any information that they want on a computer or a computing related device, right? So the thing
Yeah.
about Web 1 was it was static. Like you load a web page and that web page was static. It changed only when the author of the web page changed that website. Like when you write a simple HTML page, that was Web 1. But
Hmm.
when you generate websites that change based on who you are as a user or where your location is, that's what Web 2 was, which is dynamic web. Web 2 has been around
Right.
for 2 decades or 2.5 decades,
Yeah.
actually. So the first example of Web 2 was webmail, right? You go to gmail.com, you're opening a website, but the information in gmail.com is personalized to you. It was your email inbox. Or if you go to Facebook, it's your newsfeed. Your newsfeed is very
Yeah.
different from anybody else's newsfeed. That's what made Facebook
Yeah.
different from the early 90s Yahoo web page, which was Web 1.0, which was just a directory of the internet. It was the same for everybody,
Yeah.
right? So
Exactly.
that was, so Web 1 solved the communication problem. Web 2 solved the personalized information problem, which is when you are looking for information on the web, it needs to be relevant to you as the user. And Google
Yeah.
became the behemoth that it is right now because of Web 2, which is, they know more about you than you might know more about yourself, like just from your browsing habits and how you use your cell phone.
That's
So when
true.
you ask Google a question, it's able to use all of the information that it has about you at that instant, like what cell phone are you using, where are you, what have you looked at previously, what are your general interests, what are the kinds of
Yeah.
ads you've looked at, and then give you an answer in Google search based
Based on
on
all of
its
that. Yeah.
information of you as a user. And what is Web3 trying to solve? Web3, so the proponents of Web3 say that they're trying to solve this problem that the data and information and personalization of information is centralized. It's held by Google, it's held by Facebook, it's held by Amazon, it's held by, all of
Yeah.
these people. And then
Yeah.
what they're trying to solve is, we need this information to be decentralized, in the sense that we have all of the information that you want on a blockchain, so that these big tech companies can't manipulate the information in ways that they see fit and then try to influence people. I mean, sure, but here's that BS detection test that I talked about before. Yes, you're kind of trying to solve a problem, and it's because you don't trust, quote unquote, these big
Yeah.
tech companies or whatever.
And that's the thing, right? They're
Yeah.
pushing their problem to the general folks,
Yeah.
right? It's not a
Yeah.
general folks problem
Yeah.
that to begin with. It might
Yeah.
have been like a very small sector of people who were
Yeah.
very concerned about privacy and so on. Sure, but it's not a worldwide problem that affects everybody's lives.
Yeah.
So it's more of, again, going back to that point of solutions finding problems. Like
Yeah,
they've thought of this idea, which is brilliant, right? But then they're trying to find or tag it against a problem that isn't really there.
Yeah, so
Right?
that's the first
What
part.
you
Yeah, and the second part is the solution that they're proposing is incredibly wasteful in terms of like just the amount of energy that is required to store a 1 byte of information on the blockchain based on existing successful blockchains is crazy expensive. Like you wouldn't be able to move a tiny fraction of data that Google or Facebook or whatever is able to. Like there's just I don't see a way that all of that information can be encoded into a Web3 quote unquote blockchain. Yeah, it's nuts, man. Like so that's the thing, and I'm really incensed at like the amount of hype and the fact that a lot of like non technologists are sort of like jumping on this train because it's like no, this is the future. We need to have leadership in this space. But you can talk to most academics and people who actually study this stuff for a living, and they'll tell you that no, this is mostly hype, and it's VCs trying to make some money and generate hype, generate quote unquote companies of certain value, and then exit. Right? That's the idea. It's not really solving a problem that exists in its current state, at
I mean, I
least.
see some value in some of the stuff. Like
Yeah.
if you were to say you're enhancing communications in the terms of, let's say, everybody's working from home now. You need virtual reality and augmented reality to
Yeah.
kind
So
of
that's the metaverse
so
argument, which is a
augment.
different thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
why is metaverse also part of Web3 now, along with the same conversation as blockchain and everything else?
Yeah, no, I feel it's just Web3 just became this umbrella term of these new emerging technologies of the internet that everybody needs to pay attention to. And it's
Yeah.
and here's the other thing about metaverse. You're telling me that if you want to have a office meeting with your office folks, um, to discuss something that's really important, some officey topics. You're telling me that it's going to
Your
be
avatars.
easier and convenient for you to strap on a device to your face, get into a meeting, and then talk to people and emote and gesture in physical slash virtual space than it is for you to click on a Zoom link on a device.
What it's not making it easier. Okay, so I think we have to look at this in parallels. Okay, so
Yeah, it's not making it easier for
Zoom
sure.
and what yeah, it's more like all your video conferencing stuff that's been going on for years, right? And now it's
Yeah.
a lot better because, well, we have Zoom and everything else.
Yeah.
Before, you used to have like dedicated conference rooms where you had to go in and actually use the polyphony systems to connect and connect
Oh, yeah,
onto
yeah.
a bridge.
Zoom just completely
So it's just
disrupted
about
that market.
making it exactly. It's just about making it easier, right? So
Yes.
you're going to the next step now. If you want to talk about virtually presenting yourself somewhere, right?
Presence,
Right now,
yeah.
you have these HMDs and everything, but
Yeah.
that's not the end goal, right? The
Yeah.
end goal is obviously where you went from your giant mobile devices to your smartphones. Now, the equivalent of that would be your giant HMDs to
Yeah.
being lenses. We talked about lenses last time
Yeah,
around. We talked about
sure.
contact lenses. Something a little less invasive, maybe just a pair of like Google Glass glasses kind of thing, right? So the Google Glass was like as a concept very good because it was just frames and little notch, right? You could live with that, and it's not that difficult, and it doesn't really disrupt your environment either, right? You're not putting yourself in an environment entirely.
I get you. But here's where I will also push back. It's so what is the killer presence app? Right? What is the is it a virtual whiteboard? Like what is the value that being in a metaverse or virtual environment for, let's say, for different scenarios? Enterprise is one scenario, entertainment is a different scenario, so what are the killer apps in each of these vertical domains that makes it such that here's an activity that's really important that covers a lot of people, which you cannot engage in without this enabling technology, unless AR and VR and metaverse finds that niche, right? Or somehow Facebook's figured it out because they spend all of this money and they have all of these people on board, and they're getting ready to announce it in some big way. I think it's people still searching in like a dark room, like looking for the light switch, and then kind of like throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks. Right?
Yeah.
That's currently the situation, and so you have to be really cynical about this. If you are in any position where you have to make decisions on whether your company needs a certain type of technology, or always look at these with an extremely critical eye, or whether you want to make an investment in a new startup that says that they're going to do XYZ. I mean, you can definitely see certain applications where it might make sense. Like I was reading a tweet where there's
but
like
it
religious
might not be to
stuff.
scale. Yeah.
Like there's religious stuff, for example, where people are like, if we can give you virtual darshans in the metaverse, there may be people who will bite, right? Like the virtual pilgrimages, right?
I mean, really, like
you could also have like a virtual pilgrimage NFT for your darshan, right? Like it's like, yeah, here's an NFT of the blessings that you got from the priest after you went for that virtual pilgrimage. So those are situations where it's more emotional, right? And it's possible you could
I mean,
you could get people to
usually
bite. Yeah.
Usually that's how you would play, right? If you were motivated that way as a company to just play on emotions, you could go that route. But my kind of come back to that is, if that were a thing, then why didn't something as simple as Google Cardboard do that? Or like, why didn't that catch on, right? If you could have darshans, you could have had it on your smartphone like 5-6 years ago, no problem. That's only Google Cardboard. That's all you need. But that didn't happen, obviously. Either nobody tapped into that market, or because there are
I think it's
people are going to push back.
Problem
it's technology
packaging
versus science.
It's
technology versus science. That's nothing else against it, right?
So let's I mean, that's a really nice, interesting case study. So let's just put it this way. If you are a startup in India and you wanted to make a lot of money out of AR, VR using religious pilgrimages and things like that, all you need to do is set up a really nice user experience kiosk in multiple malls, and then catch sort of like the elderly population, because they're the most technology cynical. And then the moment you strap on some kind of like reasonable HMD and then give them like a virtual darshan of like a temple, I'm telling you, it'll change a lot of minds.
Well, yes, but not in the same sense. I mean, you would imagine so, but then again, they are cynical, right? So they don't want to like bring technology in the midst of their faith.
Oh, I see.
Right? That wouldn't
so
work.
There could be pushback because it
100%.
No, it can go either way.
Because what's the point?
It can go either way.
I don't think so. I don't think so. If technology were to improve the religious pilgrimage environment or the ecosystem that is there in India, I think we would have caught on long back.
The reason why I mentioned like seniors, for example, is not just cynicism, but also like actual ability to go on a pilgrimage. Like if they are mobility impaired and things like that, maybe there's an angle for. But
there
again,
could be something there.
Yeah. Again, what's the size of that market? And what
also? What's the difference? You could have the same recording every day. What's the difference? I mean, like you don't need to have a live darshan. It's the same recording.
Again, it depends on like how interactive it is. Like is the priest actually coming to you and asking you details about like what you want him to do the whatever for, like anyway. The risk of getting this too deep into religious stuff, but like these are certain examples where you could think of, but again, these are very hard markets to crack. And only time will tell. Like I just it's very interesting to see, at least from the technologist's perspective, of how enthusiastic and optimistic, from my view at least, on like my understanding of like tech entrepreneurs in India, how enthusiastic and excited they seem to be about all of these technologies, versus the view that I have here in the US, where everybody is way more cynical about these things. I think the mind space that Facebook has in India is way more positive than it is here in the US.
Yes,
So people
for
are
sure.
way
I'll
more
tell you why.
cynical about those
It's
things.
very simple.
Yeah.
Because people don't care as much about privacy here. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
Everybody's information is public.
Yep.
And people are okay with that. It's a cultural difference. There's nothing else about it.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's definitely one of those things.
And that's why Facebook is able to remain as successful as they are in India.
Yep.
Is because of that. Like, that is not a concern, which is one of the biggest concerns they have in the West and specifically in the US is privacy.
Yep. Privacy, and also the media narratives around Facebook, they're very different in the US versus they are in India. Like in India, in general, most big media houses won't incur the wrath of Facebook because Facebook spends a lot of money in India on advertising for Facebook, for Instagram, for WhatsApp. So there's a reluctance to run negative pieces about Facebook. Facebook has had a ton of controversies in the US with regards to election related issues, and just in general, Facebook is in a real sort of deep image problem here in the US, big enough for it to actually pivot over to Meta and Metaverse and stuff like literally the word Facebook here in the US was toxic enough for them to have to change the name to Meta. And that's the thing. It's just that most people in India don't really have all of that information about like how
do you think it has something to do with just that exactly? I mean, obviously they've had to change their name because of that, and conveniently they also have the metaverse to bank on, right? I think a lot of it also was motivated by the fact that people were losing interest in the platform.
Yes, so that's the other thing.
To be reel people back in with something new.
Yep, 100%. So as of last year, according to Cloudflare, the top DNS hit in the world was TikTok. In terms of just internet traffic for DNS lookups, I guess. So TikTok was rising in popularity.
And mind you, that's without India traffic.
Yeah, exactly. Without exactly. Without India traffic. And Facebook is hemorrhaging users here in the West. So Facebook's become the social network for old people, and TikTok's the social network for new people. The position that TikTok enjoys here in the US is what Instagram enjoys in India with Reels, right? And Instagram stories. So that's the thing. Like I think they are clamoring to find the next way to drive user engagement, and they think that it's going to be metaverse, but it's weird, man. Like people are literally like what I said. People are throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks. TikTok was supposed to be, I don't know how many seconds, 10-second videos, 30-second videos at most.
Can't remember. Yeah.
They just announced that they're going to allow longer form videos on TikTok. So it's really weird. There's this push and pull, right? Like, so YouTube introduced shorts because they want to try to get more user engagement because because people's attention spans are too short. But then TikTok is seeing that people who are constantly looking at 10, 20, 30-second videos, it's not long enough for them to be engaged, for them to be shown relevant advertising or something like that, right? So they're going in the long form direction. YouTube is trying to go in the short form direction. It's this weird situation where, like I said,
it really depends, though.
Yeah, it depends.
I mean, I don't know about different folks using YouTube differently, but personally, I don't use the YouTube Shorts as much. I don't find it useful for me. Just my use case, right?
Oh, yeah. No,
I like to be on YouTube for slightly longer form content.
Yeah.
Second thing is, did you hear about China limiting usage of TikTok and similar services?
Yeah.
in certain areas.
And gaming
right?
as well, right? Like they also wanted to enforce new
And gaming,
rules on
exactly.
gaming. Yeah.
So it's concerning. No, it's they're pushing out stuff that's very addictive.
Yeah.
Into the
100%,
market in the space and making everybody else in the same space do similar stuff.
Yep.
And then they're holding back their own folks from doing that. It's a little.
Yeah, let's. All I have to say is like strap on for the next few years. Like it's going to be a rough ride. Like there's going to be weird, interesting, and disruptive technologies that are driven by this profit motive that may include various degrees of psychological manipulation. So there's going to be a push and pull from government to regulate these things in social interest, because social interest is not aligned with monetary interests, right? This is something that we've seen for decades across all different sectors, right? There is a social interest for cars to have airbags and safety devices, right? We're going to talk about this when we get to the automotive section. And the monetary interest is to not have all of this stuff because it makes production of cars cheaper. And, so that's the thing. So it's going to be really interesting what some of the tech related regulations that come in would be in this case. Yeah, no, we really veered in the direction that I didn't really plan for this podcast, but I'm glad that we had this conversation because this is kind of what we wanted to do on this podcast. Like I wanted to talk a lot more about AI and some of the issues that AI has. So, I've been fawning about this system called DALI, but I also wanted to, in the interest of having a fair conversation and not telling you that as impressive as this AI is, it has its own problems. So let me show you an example of where this AI might fail in terms of giving it a text prompt. So for those on the video version of this podcast on YouTube, I'm showing an example that one of the users generated. So the text prompt to generate an image was a blue cube on top of a red cube beside a smaller yellow sphere. And there are this is 10 different examples. Every single example has something wrong, right? Instead of a blue cube, they have a blue sphere. Instead of a yellow sphere, they have a yellow cube, right? So these are clear instructions, and the AI is generating it based on its memories of different objects that it saw during its training process, and it's not able to compose.
Is that a blue cube on top of a sphere?
So a blue cube, if you can't see it, a blue cube on top of a red cube beside a smaller yellow sphere.
Right.
The closest, only image 2 got close.
Yeah, the closest one is right below. Yeah.
Yeah, image 2 has a blue. Yeah, image 2 has a blue cube.
No, the one right below that is closer.
Yeah, okay, right below that. The blue cube on top of a red cube beside, yes, exactly. But the sphere is not yellow, it's red.
It's orangish.
Yeah, orangish, yeah. So here's an example where it doesn't do well. And there are some things that OpenAI also talked about, like the things that it could fail at. If it's not correctly trained, it'll have gaps in its input in terms of if you didn't show it enough examples of howler monkeys, for example. So if you had all of these different examples of monkeys that you gave an input, and then you ask for it for a baboon, it may not necessarily have baboon information. But if you asked it for a howler monkey, for example, then it would actually generate images of monkeys howling, because that's what it understood, which is not bad. This is a good example. But then the cube and sphere examples that I showed in the video version of the podcast is a real example of where it can fail. And one of the other things that it may or may not do well on is it can inherit all sorts of biases in its training. So somebody had shown an example of DALI, like show me images of lawyers. and every single image was a white male in a suit.
Right.
Right? Show me images of flight attendants, and every single image was an Asian woman in a flight attendant suit. So based on the
I mean, does
training
that
examples, yeah,
exactly? That's
yeah.
based on training examples, right? So, no, which kind of just for everyone's benefit, it's basically thousands and thousands of different images that you're
Yep.
training this system with, and basically you're having somebody literally go through and say, "This is yes, no, yes, no, yes, no,"
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I mean, for that kind
No,
of
no,
bias to
not just a
happen,
human, but yeah, if your training set is biased in some way, it doesn't have enough representative samples of other races or things like that. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's what I was getting at. Is
yeah,
if your training set is defined by a human, right?
yeah, exactly.
And that's where the problem lies.
Yeah,
Is
you will inherit those human
it's
biases.
only as good as
Exactly. You will inherit all of the human biases. Now, here's where it gets really problematic. So, one of the big technologies that people are trying to use in civilian contexts is face recognition. So, whether you're going through an airport or where police is using it for police law enforcement purposes, people are increasingly using facial recognition technologies based on AI. And the problem is all of the upstarts or even the big companies that are involved in the space, they're facing a huge problem when it comes to training bias. So even in
right.
India, for example, when you run Indian faces through facial recognition tech tools, they fail at a much higher rate than facial recognition for Caucasian faces. So there's a larger potential for you being misidentified. And the other problem
Right.
is there's a huge gender bias as well. Like if you are an Indian woman, the odds of your face not being recognized are much higher than Indian men. And if you don't
Okay.
take these things into consideration, guess what? And if you roll this out on an airport on large scale, you're going to have a huge line of Indian women who miss their flights because their faces were
Yeah.
not adequately recognized. No, these
I'm just
are
picturing it.
yeah, no, absolutely. This is like a huge problem, right? Like so you
Yeah.
and the problem with all of the enterprising companies that are trying to sell AI solutions to decision makers who are not well versed with the technology, they will either misrepresent the accuracy of their systems or they won't talk about these issues, and then you'll start seeing it in operation, right? And what really
Right.
incensed me was apparently there was I've not been able to really confirm it. It was covered by Now This. There was I mean I could look it up now, but it might take me some time.
Now this
They,
from Austin Evans.
no, Now This is like a news aggregator website, right? Like they have this logo that
Oh,
says
okay.
Now This. The EU was
I thought
planning
that's the
to.
same channel that Austin Evans has.
I'm not sure. But apparently, the EU was planning to have AI based lie detection at border controls. And guess
Right.
what? Like, it's going to learn some sort of racist or cultural bias when it comes to like um, what people call micro gestures of faces. Like, it's different for different language regions, languages, and cultures, and it'll learn it's 100% guaranteed to learn some sort of racist or cultural bias that humans anyway have, and it's going to be an absolute like yeah it's the problem is that companies will come forward and they'll say that, oh, we have the solution, and then government agencies are like, yeah, sure, no, that makes sense because I want to save money. Like in markets like Europe or US, it's expensive to put a human there, let's just put a robot,
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
adequately thinking about all of the issues, societal issues that you could face for this. Yeah, it's it's a real
Yeah.
problem, and
And
I just wanted to
yeah, I
give a
mean,
shout out to one researcher who is was based out of Google India, um, and I'm just looking her up right now. She has done some excellent academic work on AI biases. Her name is Nitya Sambasivan, and she was affiliated with Google India before. She seems to be freelance research scientist, but she has some incredible papers talking. These are academic papers, right? So these are actual research
Right.
work
Right.
about how AI affects people of different races, different cultures. More importantly, how it affects people from different classes of society and different castes, especially in the Indian context. So
Right.
one of her great papers that she published at Kai. Kai is a Human Computer Interaction Conference. It's one of the top conferences for
Okay.
human computer interaction. Was a survey of user attitudes and sources of AI authority in India. And in general, there's this idea that in India, AI is 100% right and safe because it's coming from a computer, right? That's the general perception that the uh, person that
Yeah.
might have in India. And they did these amazing experiments of like, let's take um, let's take a couple of different AI tasks of like some low stakes and high stakes AI tasks. So the high stakes tasks are medical diagnosis, like you feed an AI system some input about like a patient's health markers and conditions and try to come back with a diagnosis from an AI as opposed to a human being. Also loan
Yeah.
approval, so give information about a person's income and history and all these things, and whether a AI system will approve a loan or not for that person, or whether you want to hire a person or not. And then there are some low stakes
Yeah.
recommendations, like recommend a song to me, recommend a route to me, or recommend what my current pricing needs to be on Uber for an auto rickshaw. And then find out what the acceptability of that recommendation is for different classes of people. And they find that in general in India, people are much more likely to accept AI based decisions even if it's not in their interest, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense because they're like, oh yeah, a machine said it, so it must be true.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
whoever figured this out is probably smarter than I am. So
yeah,
let's go with that.
yeah. Even if it is against their interest, like obviously auto rickshaw drivers would want to get higher fares, but they're more
Yeah.
than willing to say, sure, this is okay. Except, the one thing that they do is if there was a news article that cab drivers in like Hyderabad and other cities, they're turning off their apps in the afternoon because they don't
Right.
want to have the argument with the customer about turning the AC on or off
Interesting.
because
We'll
of
face that issue.
the higher petrol prices.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that happening.
Yeah. So those are the ways in which the users of these systems, they have certain power on those things, right? They can decide to be available or not, right?
Yeah.
So these incentives are always shifting, and it's really interesting to see what's going to happen with these things. But these are things that you need to consider about if you're in a position, like I said, if you need to make decisions based on these things. Um, just be aware that AI is not a panacea for anything. There are a lot of big open, holes in terms of their accuracy and unintended consequences of AI that may be subtle,
Yeah.
and you have to really watch out. And
Exactly.
yeah, let's see. Do you want to? Let's yeah. Since it was one of the big news articles of the last week, we definitely have to talk about it. Uh, Elon Musk and Twitter.
Yeah. That's a big one. Musk has been doing a lot of things over the past month that's been
Yeah.
very interesting to see. I mean, starting from Tesla and what they had with their cyber rodeo in Texas, their new giga plant in Texas, which was funny, right? Because
Yep.
in the video it says it's longer than the Burj Khalifa. I'm like, what? That can't be true. And then it says sideways. I'm like, oh, okay. Cool story, bro. Like it's
Cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of things are longer than the Burj Khalifa sideways.
I mean, this is one of the problems that he has. He's a perpetual hype machine, and
Yeah,
he does this over and over again. He grabs these big headlines, and then
yeah,
and they're very superficial. The moment you kind of like dig into them a little deeper, you find out the real truth. Like for example, with the current war that Russia has with Ukraine, he made this big announcement that, oh, we're sending all of these Starlink terminals to Ukraine, and
mm,
the reality is not entirely true about that. It was not him personally sending it. It was somebody else, and like it's just a lot of these. I mean, we talked about this. Tesla keeps advertising FSD as being full self-driving, and a lot of
yeah,
lawmakers and safety rated government agencies are really pushing back hard on Tesla because that is 100% false advertising, based on just the amount of
yeah.
risks that
Because
are
you have
involved
these
there.
levels
Yeah,
of autonomy, right? So all
yeah,
these
yeah,
different levels of autonomy
yeah,
for self-driving,
yeah.
they're nowhere in FSD. If you want to oversimplify things, right? So
Not even close.
it's exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're
So,
just coming
so,
off of the topic of object detection and everything. So
oh
they're
yeah,
not there.
absolutely,
Just
absolutely. It's really
tons of
dangerous.
Tesla videos where things have gone really bad.
Oh yeah, 100%. There was a research. So there's a whole other area of something called adversarial AI, in the sense that researchers want to find examples where you can trick AI systems. And one of the best examples I remember seeing was of an adversarial AI system, where if you show like a camera that's supposed to be detecting people, if you show it a certain image, then it immediately stops detecting you. You have to show it
How
a
do you
very
mean?
specific image,
Right,
and then it stops
right.
detecting you. And so one of the things that they were saying was, like, if there was a camera that was developed to detect human presence in, like, for example, a security camera, like a person who is trespassing in the space can just wear a t-shirt that has this image on it, and the
Yeah,
camera will not raise an
to co-opt
alarm.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the camera will not raise an alarm. So those are
Whoever
examples
figured
of
that
that.
out is a genius.
I know. So this is like a huge. There are a lot of researchers in machine learning that are in this. They want to find adversarial examples. So now there's a cat and mouse game
Hmm.
of adversarial examples versus, like, if you paint a weapon in a certain scheme, you can
Hmm.
fool a camera and it says, oh no, that's not a gun. It's just a toy, right? If you paint it in a certain scheme. This is interesting enough that I should
Yeah.
I should pick out examples and show it for the video podcast. But yeah, continue talking about Elon while I do that. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I mean, it's yeah. Even Shanghai, they're opening up again. I think
Okay.
on Monday they're opening up again after they've shut down. So their giga plant
Yeah.
over there is going to be back live. They also had this Cybertruck roll out again during the
Mm-hmm.
Cyber Rodeo.
Yeah.
And this time around, it was a real awkward silence moment on stage with the
Mm.
whole glass smashing episode that happened last time around in 2020.
Yep.
This time they didn't do that. I mean, they did play around with the idea on
Yeah.
stage that if they were going to do it, they wouldn't do it still.
Yep.
But the second time I looked at it right now, I mean, the Cybertruck, it really looks bad. It's like the worst low poly looking. It's
Yeah.
horrible. I don't know why people are excited. It's
I
just
don't think
bad.
I don't know if people. I mean, definitely they did get a lot of pre-orders, but the fact that F-150 Lightning is now rolling out,
Yeah,
I think people
that
are.
thing is amazing,
Yeah, yeah,
and the
no,
Rivian R1T as well.
yeah. I've seen a couple of Rivians here in Chicago as well. It looks great, but those are
I
actual
think they're
practical
going to do
trucks.
well.
Yeah, I think
It's not
Elon.
even about practicality, man. You got to
Yeah.
be. That's like I don't know how do you say, like in this age of hyper realistic paintings and everything. You're trying to present a Van Gogh and
Yeah.
say like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Like, sure, it was probably good, like in the
Mm-hmm.
80s when
Yep.
people had no context of what modern cars are supposed to look like. But right now, it just looks bad, and with a brushed aluminium, stainless steel kind of look,
Yeah.
it's just really bad.
I think the other thing is like, will it even get through safety regulations here in the US? Like that thing seems like it's the worst thing for pedestrian safety, right? Like it's got these sharp edges right up front. Like it could like pierce through pedestrians if that happens. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
regulations are there for a reason. That's like the
yeah,
whole thing about why do people drive G classes, right?
yeah,
Because they fall under some kind of tax exempt bracket because of their
yeah.
weight and stuff
That
like
makes
that.
sense.
I mean, there's going to be all kinds of loopholes for them to release that truck if they wanted
Yep,
to.
yeah. So that example of like image detection being fooled by an actual image. So this is an image that's was specifically trained in an adversarial manner to fool image detection. So yeah, like if you walked around
Right.
in a t-shirt wearing this or just have this, it'll not detect you as a person, right? And then this. So then there's
Interesting.
this cat and mouse game between the creators of these models and the people who are actively trying to, which makes them more robust. But at the same time, you got to understand, yeah, if you're wearing this, they said we do not recommend wearing this t-shirt out in public if Teslas are driving around in FSD mode because it will not see you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so the main article about the main news item about Elon was that Elon Musk gradually started investing in Twitter and he didn't make it public until he reached
Yeah.
9-ish%, right? 9.2%.
Well, now he's at 10%. Yeah, close to
Okay.
10%. And now he's the largest shareholder.
Yeah, so he's the largest
Right?
shareholder.
Largest shareholder. Obviously, with that comes a lot of benefit, but then
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of controversy happening about whether he's going to be able to do certain things that he was planning to do just because of his shareholding capacity.
But then the news progressed even further than that, right? Like he made an active all-out bid to acquire all of Twitter. And
for 5 billion more than its actual market cap or value cap or whatever you call that. It's he was offering 43 billion to buy out
exactly $43 billion
Twitter completely. 43 billion is no joke, obviously.
Yep.
But it's you got to be someone like him to kind of throw around that kind of figure and be like, yeah, cool, let's just buy Twitter, just having fun.
So here my understanding, again, Elon being Elon, and he loves to troll. This is just another Elon pump and dump scheme. So the idea is him just saying that he's planning to invest 100%, like to acquire all shares of Twitter, drove the Twitter stock up like crazy. And at this point, he has like a leveraged position where he says, "This is my final offer. If you don't take it, I'm just not going to buy Twitter," and that'll
your
cause
stock prices are going to crash.
But if he does that, let me tell you, I think he will literally sell a significant portion of his stake and then just immediately make billions of dollars just through pure market manipulation, right? That's all this needs to be looked at. It's like, yeah, maybe he might acquire Twitter, maybe he might not, but like it's all at this point, it's just a trolling game.
No, but based on the things based on the things he's been saying on stage and in press, it's basically I have these great ideas for Twitter and how it should be open sourcing it and all of that stuff. It's really pushing Twitter beyond what it really should be. And I don't think he's going to invest his time in doing that. Besides whatever he's doing with his life right now with Tesla and SpaceX and Starlink and everything else. I don't think, like you said, I think it's just one of those things where it seems like a good opportunity to bump and dump.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you again, being cynical, he is a person you absolutely need to be cynical about. There seems to be a lot of Elon Musk worship in India among people who may or may not know about him. Like some of it is for the memes and the lulls and like, crypto and all of that stuff. But at the same time, some of them it seems to be actually genuine. Like, oh no, he's a great, like, yes, I will concede that he has disrupted at least 3 different markets in some meaningful way, in the sense that he has
4 if you count PayPal.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, PayPal, all of that stuff. Yes, because that was his initial entry into like being a successful entrepreneur. And he has definitely made inroads in a lot of he single-handedly made EVs more acceptable, right? Just because of Tesla. But he is going into this weird comic book super villain level sort of like, haha, here's me trolling you guys. And he's just posting meme tweets that has significant real world consequences in terms of like, money moving around. It's absolutely insane. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Doing it for the lulz,
Did
as
you
they
see
say.
his I mean, did you see the awkward dance again at the
Oh my
Berlin
god.
plant? That's
There's just
hilarious.
so many of these from Elon Musk. Is like, yeah, just take everything that he does and says with a massive grain of salt. Like it's most of it. Like I think he's just being very media savvy, and in the sense that he's doing all of this media, like he's making the news cycle about himself, and he is benefiting all the way. He did a pump and dump with Dogecoin and his appearance on SNL. Um, uh,
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that his Twitter machinations right now is some at minimum is a pump and dump scheme, or at max otherwise it's just a way for him to make more money. That's all it is. Like maybe he has a long term plan,
Yeah.
who knows? But it is what it is. Yeah. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I don't think we should give him more airtime than that on the podcast.
He's
We're
had
just
enough this week.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The
Yeah.
other thing I really wanted to talk about, since we talked about OnePlus in our last podcast, like we forgot to mention about
Yeah.
nothing. Maybe because it was
That's
named
true. One
nothing.
of
That's
our
why we forgot to mention it, because the name was nothing. But yeah, so Carl Pei was the founder of OnePlus. He was a plucky young
Yeah.
upstart. He had the backing of the what was it, BBK, BKK? I forget what the parent company of
BBK.
BBK,
BBK. Yeah.
and then Oppo as well. And he fundamentally disrupted the Android space, at least in certain markets. India is definitely one of them. Since the pivoting of OnePlus to be sort of like an Oppo sister slash sub brand, it looks like he lost a lot of influence over OnePlus's direction, and kind of like now has
True.
moved to another plucky upstart, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And then they're planning to release something called the Nothing phone.
I
So
think
yeah, my take
with
on this,
nothing.
yeah, with nothing. There's going to be a lot of nothing puns in this segment of the podcast for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, it's really about nothing, right? So
yeah,
yeah. So with nothing, it's an interesting approach they've taken, right? So
yeah.
they started out with their earbuds, which came out
Okay,
last year,
yeah,
and the USP there was they never talked about having the best audio or anything like that,
yeah,
right? So their entire USP was around keeping it simple,
yeah.
and part of that was the design language being transparent or partially transparent.
Okay,
Um, Oddly enough, though, didn't make too much of an impact in terms
yeah,
of sales or in terms of just a lot of buzz around it, right? Nowhere close to OnePlus
yeah,
did. I think part of it would have had to do with their distribution strategy. I didn't see too many ads here in India. I'm not sure about over there in the US, but in India, there wasn't much to do in terms of their marketing campaign around
yeah.
the Nothing earbuds. But hopefully they should come out with something for their phone,
Yeah.
something for the Nothing.
See,
Right?
the other thing that's kind of important to note was OnePlus was probably the only Android upstart or startup that succeeded. If you remember, the Android, the original inventor of Android went on to try to start the Essential phone that didn't do well. There were so many
That's
other
true.
companies that even big companies like Red Cinema tried to have a Red Android phone that flopped miserably.
The red phone, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there are a couple of things that OnePlus did that, like, again, going back to my point of like, what was the problem they were trying to solve? A lot of people wanted flagship
Yeah.
phones for a non-flagship price, And the genius of what OnePlus did with the OnePlus 1 and 2 was it was invite only. So they had flagship level features at a non-flagship price with more than flagship exclusivity for their first couple of devices. It was absolute genius that how they launched the initial OnePlus devices, and they kept that going for for 4 or 5 or 6 generations, right? This whole plucky idea of the OnePlus, and then we argued in our last podcast that that doesn't seem to be where OnePlus is at right now.
Yeah, there isn't. No.
And the way
they've definitely moved away from that.
And the way the Nothing phone from his new upstart is like what he's trying to sell, it smells a lot like the Essential phone, in that they're trying to sell a design and an experience, as opposed to what the OnePlus originally was trying to solve was flagship phones at a non-flagship price. I don't know how many people will bite.
And the reason for that,
the
reason for that would be, even if you get a basic phone now, I mean, chances are you're going to be pretty happy with it for a few months at least. To start with, if not a few years. Wasn't the case when OnePlus 1 came out, right? So if you wanted flagship level, performance, you had to get a flagship phone. There was no feature phones or in mid-tier phones that could even make a dent in a flagship phone back then. But right now, everything has your 48, 55, 100 billion megapixel camera, right? So, so then it really doesn't matter at this point. Like for the use cases of the masses, you're not going to make an impact saying that, hey, we have the world's best specs. Doesn't matter anymore. That's expected now. What's expected now is the exclusivity, right? People have gone beyond the phone being a basic requirement to it being more of a personality attachment as well, right? So more towards the whole Apple angle. But this is for everybody. Your smartphone is just an extension of you at this point, and a little bit of personalization is involved there. With the Nothing or the Essential phone, there is opportunity to have that, but provided there's a big marketing push to get that to happen.
So
or the budget.
The other
or
thing,
the price.
The other thing that maybe OnePlus had considered at some point, like now that I think about it, was ideally an upstart that can come and disrupt the smartphone space would be here's a foldable phone at a non-flagship price where you make no compromises. But then again, by definition, I think that product is impossible. Because if a company could undercut, Samsung on the foldable market, then Samsung would do it, right? If they could make it cheaper. Like I'm sure they have the sort of the sales charts of like how do you price a foldable to make the maximum amount of money, and and they with the reach and the distribution networks that they have, they arrived at that price, right? Like $1,500-$1,400 for the Z whatever.
But here's the thing, right? But just on that same point, Samsung isn't pricing just based on their distribution network or the cost of manufacturing.
I mean, they also pricing
Samsung
it on
is
exclusivity.
Building a lot of the Oh no, not just that. Samsung, like we said in the last couple of podcasts, Samsung is at the epitome of mobile technology R&D, right? So
and
their R&D cost has to be put somewhere.
And they supply to everyone.
R&D cost has to be put into the cost. Exactly. And they supply to everyone, right? So all parts of their stuff, especially displays, they go to everyone, right? But they got to add in all those different costs as part of their phone, right? So it's a new entrant price. We're talking about foldables now. So if your Z Fold or your Galaxy Flip Fold or whatever else is going to, by nature, include a little bit of that cost that is going to trickle down from their investment into that technology. Speaking of foldables, they also have, or there are word of Google Pixel having a foldable version soon. So that might also be in the works. Once again, Pixel, I don't know. They keep trying everything. Google, nothing seems to stick. Ever since the Nexus phones, the Pixel, one or two of them caught on, but distribution networks are really bad. Other than that, they also have a watch coming out. The Wear OS Pixel watch
Oh
is
my
coming out
God,
this year. So
the watch, Google's saga with wearables is like,
it's bad.
yeah, it's like a textbook example of how not to try to do like a market. Like when they started, they had, it seemed like they had like some momentum going in, but it just like the cues that came out of Google just seemed like they were not invested in that space. The way,
Yeah,
yeah, it's the difference
I think
between
the
like,
biggest thing with
yeah,
Google
yeah, go ahead.
is hardware. The investment in hardware is missing.
It's not just the investment, but they're like, I'm trying to find, I'm at a loss at words of like trying to say like how badly Google bungles up hardware. It's not just the investment, but the support and the conviction that they
Yeah,
have, and their ability to stand behind their hardware products
yeah.
is, in every single space that they operate in, they just continuously fail to continue supporting their projects. And like, there's a reason that a customer buys a certain product, but if they don't stand behind their products, like 100% guaranteed you will not get a repeat customer. So Chromebooks are very popular here in the US, mostly because
Yeah.
they undercut regular laptops on price, and there are certain markets where they do excellently, especially in education. Like if you have like
Hmm.
school kids that need computing devices, you can get a Chromebook for $200 or less, right? It's the
Yeah.
netbook market basically. And Google
Yeah.
had a high-end Chromebook called the Pixel Book, which they just released like a year and a half or so ago. And the people loved the hardware. They made such a good investment in terms of the hardware specs and things like that. And just a
Wasn't that
year,
crazy expensive
it
though?
was expensive, but the folks who bought it were such big fans of it, right? And they
Hmm.
dropped update support just a year and a half after. They just out of the bag. They just said nope. Okay. So all of the
And
people
that's a
that
very important.
yeah, all of the people who invested
That
in
is a very
our
important
just
component of it. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And
And
you
bringing back to the Nothing phone,
yeah,
I saw a little bit about their plans for updates is 3 years of OS support
yeah,
and 4 years of security updates.
yeah.
3 years for OS support is one up from every other brand that I
Mm-hmm,
know with
mm-hmm.
Android right now.
Yeah.
I think even OnePlus is on 2 years or 3 years.
Or
Yeah, 2
two
years. Yeah, two
generations
years.
maybe, right? I don't know if it's
Two.
a
Yeah, two.
generations or
Yeah, I mean
yeah.
Android every year is an increment. It's a new
Yeah,
generation.
yeah, okay.
It is every year. It's been 11, 12. Yeah, it's just every year
Okay,
they
okay,
go one up.
okay.
As far as I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Could be wrong, but yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, that
Fine.
basically
Yeah.
means 3 generations of OS updates and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
4 generations of security.
Mm-hmm.
That's bigger than the promise made by any other Android. Well, I'm not going to say, I'm going to overstate it, but
Mm-hmm.
most of the major players, at least
Yeah,
for sure,
100%.
Samsung isn't doing
Yeah,
that,
100%.
and
Yeah.
OnePlus is also not doing that right now.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I mean it'll be interesting. And this has always been a problem with Android. Something that iOS does fantastically well is just the generational support that Apple is able to. Apple really stands behind their products, at least in terms of software. Whether you want to repair them or not, that's
Yeah.
a completely different. If you want to repair or modify Apple products, you're on your own. But Apple will
Yeah.
give you software updates for an extremely long generation or an extremely long life cycle for their products, and it's something that other companies try to
True.
emulate. And it's also because of Apple's dominant market position and the kind of sales that they have on different products that they're able to do that. Like Google not supporting like the Pixel Book is just based on just bad sales probably. But at some point you should also take the hit and try to get your users to sort of have like form a cult behind their products the way Apple does, right?
Yeah.
And when you undercut your customers like that, you're not helping that cause, right? Like you're just going to leave a bad taste in the mouth for
Yeah.
your customers. So yeah, wow, we went pretty long on tech today, so we'll try to get through some of the other news articles today. But I think it was a definitely a
Well,
useful
to be
discussion.
fair,
Yeah,
there isn't much. No, for sure.
yeah,
That was,
yeah.
I'm sure, insightful for everyone to
Yep.
listen to all that. about AI and everything. So that was great. Right, automotive. Let's look at what's happening. Let's start with India, right? So India, a couple of major-ish things happening. So let's start with airbags.
Yep.
Safety in general. So we talked about safety a little while ago, and how it could increase cost of production. And if the manufacturers were left to it, they'd probably choose no airbags.
Oh yeah,
that brings down
100%,
cost,
right?
and then
But
Indian regulations now are very strict on safety, which is a good thing. It's a very good thing. And by the looks of what the some of the new cars are coming in at, they haven't bumped up the prices a lot just because of that.
That's
so
good.
I think Kia in India has been kind of spearheading that very, very carefully, right? So they had the launch of their Kia Carens, which came out a month and a half ago, or maybe 2 months even, which started out with, I think, 6 airbags as default, as the entry-level model, which was based on some regulation about multi-passenger vehicles having to have a certain number of airbags. So same thing for the Kia Seltos and Sonet, which are coming out for 2022. The model years are now coming with 4 airbags as standard.
Wow.
Now, put context to that, 2 airbags was what's required as standard for all vehicles or all passenger vehicles by the Indian government. But now Seltos, Sonet, both coming out with 4 airbags from the very base model. Pretty interesting.
I see. Yeah, I mean, there's the, it's not just airbags, right? Like, so,
Yeah, ADAS or automatic braking, emergency stuff, all that is coming.
I mean, even other like really basic things used to be a huge problem. So Maruti Suzuki has a dominant position in the Indian automotive market, but they again engineer mostly lower price cars that have to hit a certain price point, right? So one of the big problems that has generally been there with Maruti is that they do terribly on crash tests because people don't care, right? Like people, there is no, I mean, there is a proposed NCAP new car assessment program for India.
I was going to come to that.
Yeah, but
it's very interesting. NCAP, I'll come to that in a minute after you're done with your thought.
Yeah, no, but the problem was that Maruti, at least their lower tier cars have consistently scored like a 0 on global NCAP crash tests.
Yeah.
There were even indications of certain manufacturers, like the Indian versions of cars that are available globally, like the Indian version fails NCAP.
Yeah.
Versus the global version passes because of, again, it's a regulatory issue versus, but also like, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's not just about airbags or safety devices. Like even things like structural rigidity, the quality of the steel that you use in your chassis and framing, design of crumple zones and things like that. Like these are things that in general, the auto manufacturers in India, at least the dominant one, like the safety is not going to improve until Maruti Suzuki makes a firm commitment on these issues. They don't have a reason to because they just keep selling. 1 out of every 2 cars sold in India are Marutis. Safety is not a priority in India. The average public disdains from wearing seat belts and things like that. And then there's this cultural attitude towards safety as well. It's like, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. I'm not gonna blame the car.
Yeah, I think.
And in the US, people like to blame the car if it was their time to go and they went. Yep, that's the difference. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of that has changed or is changing, right? So, I mean, let's not. I mean, we have to remain cynical and everything, but let's not put it like as blunt, right? Because
no, I agree.
People are focusing on the safety aspect of things, but here's the very important point that everybody keeps missing, and it's the biggest, I would say, marketing scam that's been happening in the auto space in India for a while now. It's global NCAP.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So here's the story with global NCAP. Now, the reason why we consider this as the body of safety, tests and everything, is because we're so used to the other NCAPs, like the Euro NCAP and everything.
Oh, right.
Global
right.
NCAP
Uh-huh.
is not a government-tied body. It's a private organization that does tests on demand of the OEM.
Okay.
So you can imagine how that can be swayed.
Oh, I see. So if they're being funded by OEMs,
I mean, they're not necessarily being funded. Okay, it's a non-profit. Okay, that's how they operate.
Sure,
under the
but they
umbrella
still
of
need money to buy vehicles, and
exactly.
okay.
Send over. Yeah, there is a little bit of a gray area and play around with the regulations and everything. But yeah, essentially what I'm getting at is, just because something says global NCAP 4-star, 5-star does not mean that it's going to make the same result on Euro NCAP or anything else that is a government-tied safety regulations body.
I see.
Okay, because their tests are very specified to make it better or worse depending on the scenario.
To favor individual manufacturers and to favor individual,
Possibly. I'm not pointing out any manufacturers, but let's just say it's not Bata, right? But here's the thing, right? If you looked at all of their cars, they all boast a global NCAP rating of 4 or 5 stars on a minimum.
Which manufacturer are you talking about?
You should Tata.
Tata.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, so much for that pun.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I see. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. But what I was saying is, all of their cars, or not most of their cars, are now 4-star, 5-star rated, safety rated.
And
but you got to be very cynical about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Very cynical about that, given their price point hasn't increased a lot. Right.
I see.
If only Tata has the formula for 4 or 5-star safety rating, why aren't the others copying them at the same price point just to make that sale? Right. I mean, it's debatable. Right? But the logic still stands, and it's a proven point, right? And it's global NCAP is a bit of a. Is this global NCAP? Yeah, this is
global NCAP for Tata Punch. Yeah. Now, I could push back a little bit. Yes, I agree. Like, you have to examine global NCAP. Like, what are their incentives? What is their funding model? How transparent are they about at the set of criteria that they use to arrive at certain star ratings? Why did they choose a certain crash speed? Why did they choose a certain set of tests? All of those things have to definitely be looked in through a very critical lens. The other thing that I could kind of push back on a little bit is that, so safety related aspects of cars are not like, how do you make cars safer is the thing that's not public or open source, right? Like, there are car designs are closely guarded. They're closely guarded secrets. And the reason that Tata might be having major inroads in this is because they're leveraging JLR intellectual property. No?
I gotta disagree over there. I mean, no, I'll tell you what. So JLR and leveraging platform prowess over there, right? With Tata, stops at the Harrier. The Tata Harrier uses the previous generation Land Rover Discovery Sport, chassis.
Okay.
Or monocoque or whatever it is. But here's the critical part of it, right? As soon as you change parts of the materials used, then you're bringing back into the question, is it really safe anymore?
Yeah. So what you're trying to say is
because the Discovery was based on aluminum, and then the Harrier is built in super strong steel or whatever you call high intensity steel or whatever it is, right? So it's all a marketing play. It's all a marketing play, just because. I mean, sure, yes, they could have leveraged JLR, but not for all their models. Definitely not for the Punch. They don't have any comparable models there.
No, they don't have models, but they could engage the R&D teams abroad, right? They have all of these like folks sitting there. They could if they wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
maybe.
possible.
I don't know.
But
I don't know enough to say no.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have enough information, so you have to be cynical on either point. right? You can definitely think that yes, it's a marketing ploy, or maybe Tata actually has the R&D prowess to actually do this, which is possible.
Possibly.
It can go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is yeah. I'm glad you brought this up because I was generally of the
I've
impression.
just posted a link. Maybe you want to
Okay.
open that up as well.
Okay. Yeah.
The one with car blog. So
Okay. I see. Yeah, it's not clear about how trustworthy they are on in real world scenarios. Yeah. No, I
yeah.
see. Interesting.
I mean, it's documented. It's people have already done their research. It's not
Okay.
like I'm gonna bring up something new here.
Yeah.
It's it's positioned in a way that you can
Yeah,
you can
no,
kind of
it makes
doubt what
sense.
their
It makes sense.
incentives are.
And in general, this has been the main talking point for Tata vehicles as well, right? Like that's one of the big things that they were trying
Yeah,
to push on was safety.
safety and EV.
Yeah, safety and EV. Yes, 100%. I still have the feeling though, if you take the average Maruti car and the average Tata car that are
Oh
similarly
no,
priced,
that's for sure.
similar segment, your survivability in the Maruti is way higher. Sorry, in the Tata is way higher than the Maruti, which is what.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
was just talking generally from the
Yeah.
star ratings
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
that perspective.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Let's power through some of
Yeah.
the new exits and entries.
Yes. Yes. Go. Let's
The
go.
VW Polo.
Yep.
Polo is finally done. Right. Their time is done in India, and it's about time. I think 11, 12 years and still stuck on a previous generation.
Yeah.
They were just punching out these models again and again. And it
Okay.
really can't keep up with the likes of, the stuff that's being offered right now. I think their last edition is called Legend. What you can see on screen right now is the Polo Legend. That's their last kind of hurrah. And they're going out of market soon. I think it's a good car. Good car.
Yeah.
Nothing against it.
Just to
But
like kind of
overplayed.
just to kind of ask about like I'm a bit of a VW fan. My dad used to own the Vento 7-8
The
years
sedan
ago.
version of the Polo.
The
Then,
sedan version
yeah.
of the Polo, which with the TSI. So it was
Mhm.
one of the few turbocharged DSG vehicles that you could get in India. The DSG had its reliability problems in India. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
So let's say you were into hot hatches in India and you don't want to spend more than 9 lakhs or 10 lakhs. What's your option these days?
Tough call because hot hatch below the 10 lakh price point does not exist. Okay.
Or the Indian version of a hot
blunt
hatch. Let's just say Indian, like I don't want to
even then,
golf. Yeah.
no, even then. So if we're talking
Yeah.
about hot hatches, we're talking about the Abarth Punto, which is no longer being sold.
No longer being sold. Okay.
And then you had the Polo GT, which was well above 10 lakhs. It was like 13, 14 lakhs on road.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And now you have the i20 N line, which is again not a performance vehicle by any standard. It's a more stiffened up i20 with the same turbocharged 1 liter.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they have the N line. That's an option. It's got a raspier exhaust note, but it doesn't do much in terms of performance. So there isn't much that can be picked up for kicks right now.
Yeah, this is kind of sad, right? Like, so you could argue back in 2004 or 2005, when Maruti launched the Swift, they single-handedly created sort of like an enthusiast hatchback segment in India.
Yes.
The regular Swift.
Yes.
Just because of the punchy engine and the driving dynamics that they inherited from Suzuki Global and from Suzuki's Japanese version of the Swift. The moment like the Indian auto consumers drove the Swift, it was a generational leap ahead of anything else that was in the market at the time. Right?
Yeah.
And all the other hatchbacks in India owe their success to the Swift breaking that path and enabling this idea of like, there are premium hatchbacks. They have premium sort of like, drivability and features and things like that.
Yeah.
And the Polo definitely has its own generation of fans because of people who wanted that Euro styling. They don't want the sort of like some of the styling excesses that Hyundai does with the i20, for example. They wanted like a nicer, cleaner looking Euro style car. But yeah, it's kind of sad that this segment is kind of now stuck in that rut, right? And that the Swift and the other
the segment is
folks
actually dying.
dying.
I'll tell you why.
Interesting.
I mean, the Swift is on a different segment altogether than the Polo to start with.
Yeah.
Right? It's one level down. The Polo, the i20, the Jazz, all of that stuff is on one segment. And, Swift and everything else is below that. So to begin with, the hatchback segment is dying in favor of your small SUVs. Right? Small SUVs, small crossovers.
Compact,
small crossovers. Yeah, subcompact crossovers. Yeah. So that's why there isn't much incentive for manufacturers to do much there as well. And to add to it, there is also regulation-based problems when you increase horsepower or increase displacement. Your tax
your tax
on the
bracket
car goes
going
up.
Yeah.
Insurance goes up a lot.
Interesting.
So it sort of works the same way as the EU countries where all this would matter there as well. Okay. If you look at some cars that are cross-released between the US and EU, you would note that a lot of the EU counterparts have smaller engines.
Right.
Maybe similar power, but they would be smaller displacement.
Yeah.
And that would help with their emissions. That would help with their tax and insurance classifications as well.
I see. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's sad that that segment's dying, but then that's not just an India-specific thing; it's globally as well, right? Like the hatchback segment is dying in the US. Yeah. Crossover sedans are dying in the US because everybody wants to buy a new crossover. Like this Ford literally only sells the Mustang now in the US,
or the Mustang Mach-E as well.
Yeah, but the Mach-E is like a crossover. But the only sedan you can buy from Ford in the US now is the. Can you believe that? Right? That's actually the situation.
No Fusion.
Everything.
No more Fusion.
No more Fusion. No more Taurus. No more. Let me verify this. Let me verify this. But I believe that's the case.
That's very interesting.
So if you go to Ford's website on,
it's all SUV and all Mustang.
So SUVs and crossovers, of course, all the trucks and vans, then the electric vehicles. And the only car they have is the Mustang.
That is very interesting. Well, that right there is like proof of evidence that this is what the market wants, and that's what it looks like right now.
I thought you knew about this, but this is the situation in the US.
No, I didn't know about.
So no more Taurus
stopped.
Yeah, no more Focus
RS.
No, I mean RS was a victim of Ford dealers being greedy. I don't know if you know about this. The Donut Media channel kind of covered this.
Yeah.
They were heavily marked up because people were waiting for the Focus RS for a long time because it was a big UK Euro hit, right? And then they had limited quantities coming in, and the dealer markups were crazy, so that killed the Focus RS. But
that's very interesting that the Mustang is the only car. In the conventional sense, that exists anymore from Ford.
From the company that made the Crown Vic and all the other sedans.
Well, the Model T and Model T.
Model T is like ages back, but or even performance sedans to some extent. The Taurus Show and all of that stuff.
Taurus Show.
Yeah, no, it's just a Mustang now. Insane.
That's crazy.
Insane. Moving back to
let's talk a little bit.
Moving back to India, right?
Yeah, more stuff in India and more stuff in the moving away from fossil fuel space. So Honda City, super hit in India. It's been selling for a while, and now they're just bringing out for the first time a hybrid EV. Right.
Wow.
So We spoke about actually you brought this up. Why aren't hybrids? Why were hybrids skipped over in India? And this is it looks like they were listening.
Are we predicting the future? 1 week at a time.
So so this is going to be very good for Honda.
Wow.
Okay. So if this comes in at a lower price point than the Civic had, this would be an instant hit. Okay.
Oh, so we don't have pricing information. Okay.
We don't have pricing yet.
Okay.
So we don't have pricing. So I'm assuming they should come in under the Civic's pricing, starting pricing at least. But this one comes with a claimed range of 26 kilometers to the liter.
Wow.
Again, for reference, for a petrol car in that class, you're not expecting to see more than 13-ish kilometers per liter.
Can you tell me the basics? Like, is this PHEV or is it a standard hybrid like the Prius, like the original Prius, or?
You know what? I think I have to check on that.
Okay.
I think it was a plug-in.
Ooh. Oh, this is getting really interesting. Right. Oh, wow. So another important thing that we want to talk about is, Honda, you said, was the City was one of their top hits in India. Was it the segment leader for that segment, or did the Verna do better? I don't know.
I think it was on parallels. People who, if you preferred one brand over the other.
I probably pretty close was Ciaz as well. Right? So the vehicles in the segment were the City, the Verna, the Ciaz, and then Toyota's
the Vento,
the Vento, and then
the Rapid.
Yeah, and then the Toyota's failed attempt to the Yaris, which is kind of sad. They just undercut themselves on features for that price point, I think. But this is
more like a Prius, not a plug-in.
Not a plugin. Okay, well. Interesting.
It's not a plug-in. It's more like a Prius. So
wow.
It also comes with all your safety tech, collision management, mitigation, and road departure warning and mitigation. That's pretty good stuff for that segment. I think it'll be a first for the segment to start with.
This is interesting.
Because I think the last time around in 2018, the Verna, the Hyundai Verna, which is the accent over there, it came out with ventilated seats, and some other goodies that the City didn't have at the time, and the City never had until date as well.
So this is definitely going to be interesting. Let's see how the market responds, but we can't make any other predictions unless they announce pricing.
Exactly.
But I think they chose definitely a very good time to come out with this.
What is sad though is they should have done it in a crossover or subcompact or something like that, which would have just skyrocketed their sales. It's like people are waiting for Honda to release a small SUV because they're the only brand that is respected in terms of brand value here, which hasn't put out their trial version of a subcompact.
That's really true. So
they had the Honda Jazz, the Fit on stilts called the WRV. But that's just the same thing with a little raised suspension. It's not really a different car per se.
Interesting. Yeah. Honda, as far as I know, like people who've driven Hondas in India, they generally fall in love with the driving dynamics, right? Like the engines are fuel efficient but punchy. The cities have VTEC, which is great for the VTEC enthusiasts. But in general, like that
V10 kicked in doesn't happen anymore. But
I know.
Sure.
I know, but and then there's something that Honda does with their electric power steering, which is just beautiful for driving in India. I don't know. That's my personal experience. I really love the steering feel, even if it's not. It's
India.
Beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Honda has potentially a winner on their hands, subject to pricing and availability.
Exactly.
And absolutely. Yeah. All right. Exactly. Other things that you want to talk about?
More EV stuff. Let's move on to EV.
Yeah, we'd have to go through a little faster because we're running low on time. But yeah, sure. Let's go.
Sure. let's do Lexus RZ, new EV concept again. Also going the Yoke style, just like Tesla.
Okay.
Now, is this going to be a thing? I feel like just general driving requires a circle. I don't know, might be a mental block against having a yoke steering. But yeah, they're also getting into that.
Show me a video of
You know what
somebody
it
doing a
reminds me of?
3-point turn with a yoke steering.
Yeah, there is one with
Okay.
Tesla, and
Okay.
it's really funny. Like it's really funny because it looks really awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like,
Unless they adjust the steering ratio a lot, I don't see that working. Like, you know what it reminds me of? They had this in the mid 2000s or early 2010s. They had this GM concept called the high wire.
or even before that,
Can you
Knight
read-
Rider, right?
Well, yeah, sure, Night Rider, but that was a fictional TV show thing.
Yeah.
But
No,
the
no,
high
no.
wire,
Yeah, I guess so. Let me see if I can pick that up. But yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know about yoke steering wheels, man. I don't know if it's a fad or if it's like an indicator of like the self-driving future and the fact that humans won't have to touch the steering wheel as often, so then we can stylize it. You know?
yeah,
Does that make sense? Like the
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's what people are trying to play on in terms of like these yoke steering wheels. And yeah, I'm trying to find a high wire
Yeah.
with the interior shot.
I've just posted a link. Maybe
Okay.
you can just open
Okay.
up that link.
I see.
Right.
Alright.
Meanwhile, while you look at that, so
Yeah.
some of the other companies that are playing in the EV space in general, now with all the regulations that go into it, I know Tesla has been very successful at getting over all of those regulations, and now Rivian has proven very clearly that you can do it even as an upstart. Yeah, you can do it, and you can put your product out there. And Lucid has most recently come out with their really awesome looking EVs that like I really love. And some of the other startups not so successful right now. Faraday Future, right? They're having further trouble right now with their company management and investigations around their management being involved in some kind of scam.
Yeah. It's not just Faraday Future.
Doesn't.
There was like there was some Donut Media had covered the case of another electric truck manufacturer based. I forgot what it was based on the name of the city that had a previous GM plant. What was it? Highwire? No, not Highwire.
No.
Anyway, I can look it up, but yeah,
Fisker.
Sure. Yeah,
Fisker
yeah.
is another company that had the Fisker Karma, that was really cool looking EV. I think it was sold exclusively in the US.
Yeah, the Fisker, yeah.
It was the pre-Tesla period. But they've just set up offices or HQ in India, in Hyderabad.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
No clear indication of what their plan is in the long run here, but definitely they're involved. So they might look at starting up something in Hyderabad and see where that goes. Question on EVs though. I don't know, how are your thoughts on EVs and the tuning space? All these different sub-brands like AMG and all these different tuning houses that are associated with the current bigger brands. What's going to happen to these?
This is houses? It's going to be interesting. It's just like, are the tuner companies just going to mod cars by saying, "Hey, like we just added 50% more battery," and then added
here's a motor swap. Like that's basically right. You can
motor
put
swap
more powerful motor in it,
or it'll be like ECU chipping, right? Like you're saying, okay, I've changed the motor firmware and I've unlocked.
And the entire thing is ECU.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, the entire thing is ECU. So that's going to be interesting.
No, but like that's the thing, right? What's their involvement in that? There isn't much for them to do if the R&D team is already looking at maximizing efficiencies versus power from the manufacturer itself. So what are the tuning house going to do?
Yeah, it's going to be, it's an interesting question. So it's going to be similar to like the mobile phone space, right? It's like, because cars are increasingly turning into like these tech commodities like mobile phones. So the idea is you have a custom phone because you flash the ROM on your phone and you made it the way you want it. So the tuning companies are all going to be about software reflashes and like, who knows? Like, yeah,
it's kind of in line. It's kind of in line with both of them, right?
Yeah.
One of those scenarios is going to break faster than the other.
And then the other problem with EVs is, generally performance or higher priced EVs are performance focused anyway. So typically they would do it according to the performance specification of the chassis and the available sort of motors and things like that. But if you're a tuning company and you're going to tune electric motors and electric powertrains, like what about the safety aspect of it? Like how are things going to be, right? Like already, electric vehicles are kind of dangerous that way, and like it is going to be weird to say the least.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, so that was the quick roundup of the quick roundup of all the automotive stories. I wanted to talk about a few gaming stories. I may or may not share my screen about these things, but UE5 is the new Unreal Engine from Epic.
Yeah.
Unreal Engine is such a power force in gaming because it's one of the best general purpose gaming engines that's available that powers a lot of different games. UE5 made some big splash last year for the Matrix experience. So they had a demo of Unreal Engine 5 showing very photorealistic sort of depictions of scenes that look like that could be from Matrix. Even if the Matrix movie didn't do so well, I think this Unreal Engine demo was a big hit of the capabilities, and it's going to be the main engine that powers the next generation of games for PS5 and Series X and ray traced
all the AAA titles.
Basically the new generation gaming hardware that has ray tracing support and things like that. So the big announcements were that the next Tomb Raider is going to come out on UE5, and what was the name of the Cyberpunk folks? The Red engine.
CD Projekt Red.
CD Projekt Red. Interestingly, is abandoning the Red engine and moving to UE5 for Witcher 4, the next Witcher release. So maybe the Witcher 4 will come out in time as a result, because they're going to operate on a mature engine compared to Red. But that's going to be interesting.
With what they've had with Cyberpunk, it's good call.
But from a personal standpoint, and interestingly enough, for fans of who may be as old as I am, in terms of the gaming space, one of my favorite adventure games of all time, which is Monkey Island, is coming back, and it's coming back with the original team that was involved in Monkey Island. So Ron Gilbert, who is a legend in the adventure game space, is planning to release a new version of Monkey Island called Return to Monkey Island. I'm sorry for the noise that's coming in here. But the art style seems very nice for it's more attuned to the original art style of Monkey Island. And I'm super hyped about this.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Also on Unreal 5, what we missed was it's going to apparently have a lot of impact on the metaverse. Now, going back to the metaverse, they're also looking at how that's going to improve things. So it should be some interesting time going forward. Just looking at how this changes things for that path as well.
Okay. Yeah, and then some of the other things that we wanted to talk about was there may be a remake of Max Payne 1 and 2. So, reported by Eurogamer, Max Payne 1 and 2 remake is actually in the works and it's been confirmed by Remedy Entertainment, the folks behind Alan Wake and Control. So, it's going to be interesting.
It's sort of like Control, right? It's going to have elements of Control.
Absolutely. Control has so much Max Payne in their DNA. Like the moment you play, it's interesting. So Max Payne, when it came out, it was so revolutionary because it was a game mechanic that was never explored. But now that almost all games have some sort of time slowing mechanic, apart from the nostalgia factor, will it get grab people in?
Max Payne did correctly was the timing, because it was around the same time as the Matrix.
Yes, 100%. Matrix and all the John Woo
everybody could
movies.
relate.
Yes.
everybody could relate to what this is.
It was a product
We
of
just
its
called
time.
it a different thing. It was called
Yep.
bullet
Yep.
time.
Yes,
Right?
100%. Yeah, it was a product of its time. It was like everybody loved the bullet time effects of all the action movies of that generation. I don't know if it'll translate as well these days. So,
But very different to Max Payne 3, right? So Max Payne 1 and 2 was sort of similar. Max Payne 3 was totally different.
Max Payne 3 was made by Rockstar. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, but it was totally different as well.
It was a tonal shift, and no, for sure. So yeah,
Speaking of games like that, I think Ubisoft is coming out with more Splinter Cells. I can't wait.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of Splinter Cell.
Huge fan. And it's sad that they kind of abandoned that that whole franchise. But if they're coming back with a new one, I'll be very happy, as long as they don't Ubisoft the game and make it like an open world quest based system. Oh my god! If they Far Cry it, and no, I'm not gonna bite anymore, because that's what's happened.
Now I'm not too excited.
No, I don't think they'll do it. If they do it, it'll be suicide. They'll destroy the franchise. But
it's hard to say that though, because see, if you've had this much of a gap between releasing episodes from the same franchise, I think you have the opportunity to change the entire thing, right? Because the same game is like, besides you and I, right, most other people who would have had played Splinter Cell back then are not going to play new Splinter Cell if it comes out. Most of the people, right? A lot of the people who used to game back then aren't gaming now.
So who are the, like, for people who wanted to scratch their Splinter Cell itch, what were the games that came after that? I'm trying to think about that now, right? Like, what were the big stealth based?
Metal Gear Solid, Hitman.
But Metal Gear,
all the Hitmans.
True. To some extent, yes, that's true. Hitmans, I guess. Metal Gear Solid took very interesting turns because they also kind of moved over to an open world scenario with the latest MGS.
Yeah.
And
it was a great game, though.
It was a great game, and it was a big hit too. So
yeah.
But at the same time,
also Kojima is in the news.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, Kojima is in the news today. I can't remember what it was about, but they're definitely doing something. Okay. I can't remember what it's about.
All right. And I think with that, we should call this episode a wrap.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking around and listening to our rants and incoherent ramblings about all of these different topics. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate the fact that you made it to the end. If you like our content, please do subscribe, tell your friends, share the video with other people. If you're listening on audio, thanks for listening to us on your favorite audio platform. We are on Google, we are on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, we are on Amazon Music.
And Amazon.
Yeah. If you did like this podcast, please subscribe if you haven't already, and do let your friends know. If you're curious, and if we do talk about a lot of things that involve sort of our visuals, you should definitely check out our YouTube channel, and you can see sort of some of the videos and some of the images that we were talking about. I do share them on screen occasionally. But again, thanks for joining our podcast.
Thank you.